what do I want to do first? Let's do some coral. Do I want to do procedural coral models? We need to make models. So I'm gonna make some, I guess, some procedural coral. All right, so I'm gonna try to do what is it called? It's like this weird flat coral stuff. Uh, I don't know. That's probably not the right name. Why do I keep typing float? Flat coral. There's a word for this. I just can't. Yeah, this stuff. I'm gonna try to procedurally model this stuff and see how it looks. So we want to go into our static modeling and grab something that is making. Oh, I mean, I don't really need to grab a previous one, but it'll be a little bit easier if I use a previous one. So I want to base it off of. Oh, I don't know. It looks like mushroom. So then, should we use the model build mushroom function? Maybe. All right, move this way down here. Yeah, maybe you're right. We're only going to build, I guess, one type, so we can get rid of these lines. So we're going to have something called flat coral. Whoops. Flat coral. Flat coral. Flat coral. So this would build 20 procedural models to be used in the game. It would build 20 on initialization, and we'd use that. But we can up that number to however many procedural models we want created for the game. All right, so this count thing, we're not even really using that, just one, but whatever, I'll leave that just in case you want to change that so there's more models in there or whatever. The parts, however, is going to be reduced down to 1, I believe. I don't know how flat I want this to end up looking, so that might be too flat. How do I want to do this? I mean, we're just going to rewrite most of this code probably. Yeah, you know what? Let's grab all these things, delete them, and just have a simpler loop where it's just this. This is all I really care about. It's really just that. Maybe a few other bits and pieces, but that should be fine. We don't need any stem stuff. A lot of this is going to be most of this is going to be done from scratch. Yeah, all of this, I don't need it. Okay, so we're going to paste this in, and I'll try to walk everyone through what's going on with how we're doing this. All right, so we have our for loop with how many steps we want it to be. So we're basically making a flat circle right now, which is made out of triangles. Now, depending on how many steps we made, it would be how smooth that triangle, that circle looks. I'm gonna up it to 9 pieces. So this is gonna be 9 triangles if it's perfectly flat. That would make our circle. And then we're using math sine and cosine to do that. So we're, this is pretty basic. So it's a cosine for our x values and sine for our z values. For the first bit, it's just I divided by steps. For the second bit, it's the next step. So we're doing I plus 1 divided by steps, and then we're just multiplying that by tau, which is 2 pi. So that part is pretty basic. So these are our positions. We're not like doing anything like with scales or anything. So these are all basically going from 0 to 1, or really -1 to +1. So then so it's actually twice our radius, and then we just multiply it by scale. Okay, so we have these positions being pushed, UVs, colors, and metadata. I think that's all we need. For these colors, let's just make it like solid red or something for now as a test. 1, 0, 0. UVs, we're gonna just disable UVs because I don't know what texture we want on them. It's just these positions that we really care about. We don't need to do X adjust probably. That's moving it around. That's translating. Y adjust we probably don't need, and Z adjust we probably don't need. I'm probably gonna make this look a little bit more 3D because it's gonna look too flat. So I'll make the top flat and then underneath it make it look kind of like a cone shape. So I'm just gonna leave these at 0. So yeah, this is just going to be 0, 0, 0, which is the center point. And then our radius, I'm just going to have this be our static radius. We're not going to do anything fancy with this. We will eventually. To make it look very nice, we need a very nice coral model for this. But for now, we're just going to say rad equals, I I don't know, make it 2. I mean, I guess we could randomize it. Math.random. We're going to use seed at random for this. Math.random is easier to use for now. So I do 1 plus that times 3. So that'd be between 1 and 4 units would be our radius. Although I guess it's kind of doubled because this would return from -1 to... No, I think it'll work. I think. I'm not really sure. It might be doubled. But that's okay if it's doubled. It'll just be really big. I guess I'll make them... Yeah, red kind of works. Maybe I'll make it so it's like a gradient. I should get a nicer color for this. I guess I will. Let's get like a nice tan color for this. So these will all be divided by 255. I'll just leave them like this. I'm not going to calculate the math in line. So that should work. What do we have to do at the very end of this? Anything? Probably not. So in theory, we have our models that are working. And it should build them, in theory. So this is almost ready to go just to preview that, and then we can make our small changes and see how they take effect. So let's make a sub-entity real quick. Do I have any sub-entities in here really right now? No, not really. Let's call this flat coral. So yeah, I'm just going to duplicate this file, save it as flatcoral.js under our sub-entities, and then we just need to make sure we load that file up in our sub-entity loader. I guess I'll put a line break here. Flat coral, and then we just need to do a little bit of conversion here. I mean, I know this is not a great process, but it will be better eventually, I promise, guys. Flat coral. And we are making currently 20 procedural models, it looks like, right? So we want our model count to be in there. Where are we storing a model count? Over here. Yeah, this should all be fine-ish. We probably don't need any inventory properties, but I'm going to leave them anyway because it doesn't really hurt to leave it. Seed adjust should be different, though. It's just literally just a random number that we're using here. I can just mash different things on my keyboard. And it should be fine. Sure, whatever. It really doesn't matter. And then we're just going to make it so we have a high frequency on these things in the beach biome. I mean, it's not going to look great yet, but it should be okay. And we're going to just spam them like a lot so we can see them really easily. Let's do 1% of tiles. That's a lot of, that's a very, very high frequency. And we're just going to make this so it is in the beach biome. We'll also need to do an elevation function on there though. Yeah, I think it's just max elv is what it is. Interesting that I don't see that. Oh, because it's probably using a default one. We're just going to make that like negative something like that. We are going to have to do no, min elv that's supposed to be. We're going to have to do a max elv though so it doesn't go above water and stuff. But we're not worried about any of that yet. So we should see flat coral. But I probably fucked something up along the way. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. Yeah, completely forgot about this. This needs to be fixed eventually. But I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to fix it, which is why I have this comment here. Okay, at least I figured it out. Okay, cool. Now we should have some procedural model stuff going on. Yep, and now I'm spamming console like crazy, but yeah. Okay, so... I also want to make the terrain more bumpy when you're in the ocean because I think that'll look cooler, especially in coral reefs. But let's first stop this from spamming console a million times. And then we can mess around with the modeling stuff, which is in static modeling. We're going to move that outside of static modeling. So it's this code here. I think it'll be okay unless it's going to bitch about the synchronous about this and being in the wrong order and stuff, which it might. But we're going to try to move that and then put it in the bottom of this file. So because it's part of this, although I guess I want it to be part of the non-web worker side. Yeah. Yeah, it's white for a while because I never got around to fixing that. So yeah, this is the procedural modeling stuff. Cal is going over what we were doing with it. Right now I'm just trying to make flat circles on the ground. Obviously, it needs to be made out triangles. So our steps is doing 9 triangles, right? This is just some basic trig right here. We're using sine and cosine. Our x is using cosine. Our z is using sine for the positions. So we're basically just have a for loop for how many steps we want it to be, which is how many triangles we want it to be. The more triangles, the more circular it'll look. If we did 8, it would just look like an octagon. 9 will hopefully look okay. It could be low res. We're gonna put some texturing on it and stuff, so it'll maybe look better. But this is what we have so far. So that goes through what we want it to go through. And let me think. What are we doing here? Give me a second. This is just going to go in a basic circle around the thing. So I divided by steps times tau for cosine, and then do the same for the z with sine, and then to get the next position would be where the next step is. So it's just I plus 1 divided by steps. Hopefully this is fairly understandable, just to make a basic circle. And then we push those positions, and then we have to push our UVs and colors and metadata, which right now I'm just kind of like leaving all alone. And that gets us these flat things on the ground, but I need to refresh because I'm saving console like way too much for Chrome to be able to handle it. In fact, I might be fucking over my console where I have to close the tab and reopen it. Okay, there, it finally cleared. So we're gonna do something with the Y position. What I'm going to try to do, and I need to make these back faces, so I'm gonna actually have to flip these. So let's flip these ones around. So this is gonna go. I'm going to try to make it look like a cylinder at this point for my idea of what I want this to look like. And then, so these will be the top points for, let me think, hold on. Yeah, these will be the top points. We're going to make them 1 unit up, and these are going to be 1 unit up as well. We should store something called var height. I guess I will right now. We'll just make it 1 for now, and we could change that and make it procedural and all that stuff later on. So this will be the height. This is the y-axis one. I guess I'll space this out so I could, see what's going on a little bit more easily. Might as well do the same here. Why not? Right. So this works. We have our cones, but I didn't also make UVs and positions and metadata for that, so everything's a little bit fucked up. But we do have things that look like cones, which is good. Just very, very shallow cones, but that's what we want for this type of coral. Again, we are modeling something that's going to hopefully end up looking like this awesome stuff. I'll try my best. I don't know how good I'm going to be at it, but that's the goal, is to end up with something like that. So we're going to push our UVs. I mean, we could push this in a much nicer way, in a much more efficient way, but we don't care that much. We just want it to be readable code, because this code only fires on initialization. So we don't care about it too much. So I'm going to do something that says like the bottom RGB for the bottom part of it is going to be the same as this. So we're going to have a top RGB as well. Top RGB. And we're going to make that this. I mean, I guess I'll calculate this math. Yeah, I'll calculate it. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. So then we use our top RGB values here. So it'd be I guess I might as well just type these out manually. It's going to be the same 3 lines. And then we do the same thing with bottom RGB, which would be slightly darker than top RGB. So this is going to end up being an array that's top RG0 times, I don't know, if we want it to be half the brightness, it'd be times 0.5, but I don't really know. We'll have to play around with those values and see what looks best. Then this color might be, we can define this color outside of here, and probably also the bottom RGB outside of there. It doesn't really matter again, because this code only runs on initialization, so we can pretty much make it as inefficient as we want, and just might make the load time, half a second longer or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We do want to smooth this, because right now it's using the dark color and not doing a gradient towards it. Okay, so actually we want to use the top RGB for the top values on the bottom part, which would be these ones and these ones, the first two. So these are top RGB. There's only one bottom RGB point right now. Okay, so this is sort of kind of working. I mean, it looks like shit, but we need to texture it. But one thing that I do want to do, because these are supposed to be procedural models, so they're all supposed to look different, is we want to, since these are, if we look at them in real life, they're kind of shaped a little bit wonky, and they're moved around, so they're not all perfectly circular, especially depending on what type they are. There's all different types. I'm going to wobble around the X and Z vertices on these. Yeah, so we want to grab that. We're gonna move it on the X and Z number. So we'll do x1 plus equals seed it rand. There's a few ways to do this, but I'm just going to use the x1 value. I mean, this is lazy, but it's okay with me. And we'll just add our temp seed onto that. And maybe we should multiply this value just so it gets a little bit crazier. Okay, so we're going to add that, do minus 0.5. So that's how much it would wobble around for that unit, or that thing, that position. We do the same thing for all these other positions. I'm not really sure if I'm doing this right, but we'll figure it out. Right, and these are going to be Z, and then all of these are going to be 2. And then we need to just make some sort of variable for how much we want to amplify that, but that might be okay. Although I guess we need to do it towards the scale, which is the radius. Yeah, we want to limit by the radius. So we're going to say times, and it would only be maybe 10% of the radius that can move. All right, let's see if this gives us a more wobbly cylinder. It should look less perfect now. I think it is doing it, but 10% is probably not enough. So you see, this one is definitely not cylindrical anymore or circular from top. But I think I want it to be a little bit crazier. We won't, it looks like shit until we like texture all this and everything, but for now, it looks okay-ish. All right, so let's up this to 20%. And see how crazy these look. Okay, so there you are. They're definitely a lot more varied now, which is good. Yeah, we get some cool funky shapes like this, which is what I'm going for. Is that just because it's clipping through terrain? Yes, it is. Never mind. That one doesn't count. But I want some funkiness. I want some crazy procedural shapes. Oh, also, we are only making 20 procedural models. We probably should up that to, let's do 50 procedural models in the game. And then where if we have that model count being stored, which is over here, we just up that to 50. So it should randomly select from those 50 models that are built on initialization. But I'm going to go even crazier. I'm going to do 30%. Now, I suppose what we maybe should do to make it look a little bit better is just change the radius per one. I guess that would work. Right now we're actually moving the vertices just around instead of moving the radius, but this, it's just going to give two different effects. I don't really know which one's going to look better though. All right, so these are pretty crazy, probably too crazy really. I don't know why 20% didn't look crazy enough, but 30% is like super crazy. Yeah, it's interesting. And what I also think I want to do, just to make it look a little bit nicer, I mean, again, it'll look better once we have these textures on it, but I'm going to do some sort of middle color on this. Maybe I'll even, for now, use the bottom RGB, which is a little bit hacky, but whatever. So the edges will be lighter than the center. Okay, I mean, it's something. I think the 30% is probably too much, though. I'll just do 20%. Okay, Maybe I should only be limiting radius though, instead of actually just translating vertices around. That's something I'll have to decide. Yeah, I'm not sure. But what else do we do here now? I mean, we definitely have to texture it. I want to sink the bottom part into the ground a little bit. So I'm just going to make it like negative. I should say depth. Yeah, you know, let's make a depth variable for how much it should be sunken into the ground and store that here. Var depth is -1. That might be kind of too much, really. It shouldn't really need that much, but we'll mess around with it. I'm not sure. Well, I guess colliders shouldn't be too hard. Once I have my proper cylinder colliders going on, colliders should be just fine with these. And I probably will randomize the height a little bit, just a tiny bit, especially because there's an area that has the same exact elevation. Oh, interesting. We might want to change the depth based off the radius. Kind of didn't think about that. I mean, it's not that bad. But yeah, I should do that, shouldn't I? Yeah, so this is going to be times rad. But then we don't want it to be that deep, so we want to do like 0.2 times rad. Alternatively, I guess we could just have something called scale. It doesn't really matter. It's really mostly just a naming thing at that point, but yeah, it works just fine. Okay, this is starting to look like some coral, I think. I mean, it's not great. I also want to bunch them together. So, you know, most of the time when you see these, they're just in bunches, and then they're not anywhere else really. So that is something I want to do. So that would be under the spawn rates. We're going to put them in bunches. So the frequency is going to be a lot higher, but just in small clumps. Where is that? Frequency here. Okay, so I need to find something that spawns in clumps. Forsythia bushes spawn in clumps, so we can maybe grab from there. Yep. So this noise is the function we're going to use. I need to update this so it's in its own function, so we don't have to do a bunch of manual math here every time. But well, we can do that another time. It doesn't matter. Just put some random-ish numbers here. So this would be however many units we want to see them for. So like if we want there to be this coral wreath type thing every 100 units, this would be basically correct. But let's make them a little bit more common. Let's make them every 50-ish units. And then how large we want it to be, like how large we want the patch to be, which needs some math. Let me think of how we have to do that math again. So it's that, but then it might be either double that or half of that, since it's -1 to +1. I think it'd be half of that. So at this, it'd only be 4 units big. So that's not really big enough. So we're going to up this to like whatever. I don't know. We'll just play around the math values so we like it, but there are definitely ways to do this more mathematically correct. And I will eventually build a function that does that all for me. So I'd just be able to throw in a couple numbers and it just so it'll all actually mathematically calculated correctly. But if I did this correctly, oh, did I up the frequency? No, I didn't. So we'll do 10% of tiles, see if that's too much. If I did this correct, we should have patches of this now, very dense patches of this coral. Yep, cool. And then we need, so there's a lot of clipping, so we like want to randomize the Y or the height or something like that. But this is already definitely looking closer to what I envisioned in my head. Again, I want the terrain to be bumpier in the ocean. I think that'll end up looking cooler. It might not be the most realistic thing. I'm not really sure how bumpy it should be to be realistic, but I think it will just be better to look in the game. But yeah, let's randomize the height. A little bit. Just a tiny bit. Math.random times 0.5. Just 0.5 units difference. Also, do we have a scale thing going on with this thing? No, we don't. So we could also randomize the scale even afterwards. That would be on top of the 50 procedural models, but that's not super necessary. Okay, there's still a little bit of clipping. But this is looking okay. Yeah, let's randomize this height even more, actually. So like really go for it. Let's add a lot of weird variation. I guess this should maybe be using the same as radius for the height. Yeah, probably. So I may have to mess around with that. It just depends on how crazy you want them to look. All right, yeah, these are a little bit too tall, maybe, especially that. So yeah, we should base it off of radius. I think. So this is just going to be this. I mean, we can make it exactly what radius is, or radius. Yeah, we'll do like 0.5 times radius, or maybe 0.3 times radius. We'll see how this looks. Hopefully, amazing. Okay, and then I might even want to randomize each Y vertice just a tiny bit. I don't like this clipping that's going on. I guess what I could do also is take that center point and just add a tiny bit to it so it's not so clippy. Once we texture all this too, it might blend in a little bit better, and we'll also have to randomize the color a little bit. So this is our center point. So let's just add a small value to that. Let's just see if this fixes some of the clipping. I mean, even if it clips through a little bit, we don't want it to like wobble with the clipping with like the floating point precision. That we at least want to eliminate. Okay, yeah, it looks like it's probably doing a much better job. Yeah, that's definitely much better. Cool. So you have these flat coral procedural models. Now we need to texture them. Well, I mean, we'll also do more stuff with the models. So we'll like maybe randomize the brightness or the hue or some sort of color stuff with it, and mess around with it more and more. But I'm liking what we have right now. I don't exactly know what I want the texture to look like. Yes, there's a little bit of clipping here, but since we changed that Y value, I mean, it should just blend in really well, especially once it's textured. All right, let's see what these look like in general. So the very edges are a lot brighter. We're gonna have to do some alpha stuff on this, aren't we? And we probably are gonna want to rotate it a lot randomly as well. And there's all kinds of things that we're gonna have to do with this. But we'll figure it out. So I just need to make some sort of weird bumpy texture that gets brighter towards the very edge. Some sort of weird random shape. So let's try to do that. Let's see how awful I am at texturing this thing. So we'll switch over to Photoshop. Open up. Let me think. Stack.psd. And I'll just try to make some room for it somewhere. I mean, it might not be the best texture. I'm just going to hand paint something right now and see if it works. Okay, so these coral things look kind of like just like a bumpy, weird thing. Pretty irregularly shaped, but we still want to keep it mostly circular. But every now and then we could have like a dip in like that, and it might look okay. This is mostly what they end up looking like, right? Okay, and then we just need to fill this in. I guess what I could do to fill it in is do one of the, contagious, and then just fill in this bit here. Okay, and then for the texture inside of it, I have an idea of how I'm going to make that in Photoshop. I'm going to try to do one of these guys. So I'm going to put this down and then make some noise, right? Just do noise just like that. I'm going to use a little bit of blur on there. Just a little bit. That might be enough. And then I'm going to try to posterize this. Maybe about there. And then I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. That's a lot of bit, but maybe that's okay. That's better. Okay, so there's a nicest texture. Then we're going to do reduce noise on that. That's maybe good enough. Maybe I'll do one more reduce noise on there. I don't know. I'm okay with that. And then we do need to go back to reduce the contrast just so it works well in the engine. I want it to be at about 50% brightness. About there. And then we just need to put a clipping mask on there so it works together. And then something we need to do is have another layer that makes the edges brighter, because we noted that that was what they looked like in real life. They had a nice brighter edge. So let me get some sort of brush going on here, something like this. So we'll try to highlight this border of this, and hopefully it will look cool. So we'll do that. We'll make it a clipping mask. Then we'll run like maybe overlay on it or something. Overlay is not actually that good. What about soft light? That's not bad. Bring the opacity down quite a bit. And also let's erase some of it, because some of it's not tight enough around the edge for my liking. I mean, we won't really know until it's in game how good this is going to look. It may look like it may just look really, really shit. I'm going to bring this opacity down even more. And something that's interesting with how it's going to work with mip mapping is we actually want to bring the opacity of the entire thing down. Using a mouse? No, I'm just doing everything on my trackpad. I know some people think I'm fucking insane for doing that. But I'm fine with my trackpad. Yeah, so put this on. It's only at 10% opacity. So then we need to do UV stuff for this. We need to grab the UV coordinates on that. Okay, so I have this little calculator app for my Mac that stores these variables, so it's easier for me. I mean, I could just build this in JavaScript, but since I have an app that does this for me, I'm using something to convert the pixel coordinates into UV coordinates. So we just need to grab this. And then it's at 1147, 1248. And then we would grab those UV coordinates that would be from the center. And then we also need a width of some sort to check on that. But the center coordinates, so we're going to define this, I guess, up here. Var UV X is this. We're going to have a UV Y is, that. We're also going to have a UV width or radius or something like that. I'm just going to call it width, though, even though it's really a radius. A width will work for me, which is going to have to be a little bit bigger than that, right? So I'm just going to drag it out to, actually, that's not what we want to do. We're just going to have to play with a number, I guess, really. So we just want to grab the width of this, but it's going to be larger than that, so it's 203. But it is not going to contain inside itself because it's a circle. Where's that under 203? So we're just going to make it a little bit bigger. Let's just make it 250 and see if it fits inside that. So then there's our UV width, which is really a radius. Okay, so to get these UV information, we need to use, I guess, okay, we want to store these somewhere else, actually. So we're actually going to have something here that says adjustments for these, and instead of doing plus equals. That way we can use the same information for the UVs. So we're going to have to add these on. I don't know, this isn't ideal. I guess I could do the UVs first before I adjust these. It's a little bit weird to do that, but it doesn't really make a difference. I just normally do positions then UVs, but it really doesn't matter. So UV stuff. So the center points, which are, we're just going to focus on the top part, actually. This is all, which is the top? Yeah, this is all top part. So we're only focusing on these first three lines. So it's going to be UV X and UV Y for these. Whoops. Because that's the center point. And then these are going to be plus X1 times UVW. I think I'm doing this right. And then we need to do the same thing with Z on this side. And then for the next one, we just use, I think, 2 for this. I think I'm doing this all right. Right? Oh, but I actually used 2 then 1. Okay, that's fine. Probably to make sure that they are front faces, not back faces. Okay. So in theory, we will have our thing. Let me make sure that we aren't loading an old cache texture. Whoa, why is Chrome? Oh, because it's zoomed in, right? Okay. I'm going to do another hard refresh just so it's not using the cache. Yeah, I put UVZ somewhere. It's supposed to be UVY. Whoopsies. Wasn't paying attention. Cool, we have it. That's interesting. Oh, there must be a shape there already at a very low opacity. I didn't notice it because of that. Okay, but that already looks a lot better. I mean, it still obviously needs a lot of work, but that looks a lot better than what we had a little while ago. We also want to randomly rotate these UVs, so that'll be something we do. So we do want to recalculate this. Oh, we could actually just recalculate the actual rotation of the model. That works even better. So var rot equals math.random times math.tau. And then we would just add that inside of these. Okay, that would rotate the UV. That would rotate the positions, which would in turn also, I believe, rotate our UVs with those positions. It should. I hope. But yeah, I do need to move the well, the UV width is way too big, but also I just need to move this because it's already being taken up by something that's at a much lower opacity that I can't see. So let's just move it. Hopefully it's free over here. One way that we can test this out is just to temporarily merge visible and then fill everything in that has opacity to it. How do I do this again? Oh, not merge everything though. We can't merge this layer because it has 1% opacity to it. So now we merge visible and then do this. There we go. So we can see where those shapes are that are kind of hidden. I guess I should keep something like that looks like this. So I will do that. And then we'll have this layer, I don't know, somewhere just to be able to move it just around temporarily. It really doesn't matter that much, but oh shit, and when I moved that, I didn't move the other stuff with it. So we do have to, I kind of fucked some stuff up over, so I gotta go back. Whatever, it's fine. Could I now paste this in maybe? Okay, cool. So we have this shape that I can now drag all of these over to maybe about here. It seems to be pretty free. Yeah, right there. So then I just need to grab those the new UV X, UV Y coordinates. I mean, I do have to organize my sprite sheet. It's just that I had to update a lot of UVs to fix all that, but I will do that. I got to think of a good way I got to create a script that if I change something, it moves all those positions over and stuff for anything that was using those positions. So that'll be a whole to do. But yeah, if we move this over, put that in there, put this new one in here, and then save the Photoshop document, save it as a PNG as well, and make sure it doesn't cache the image. And we're also going to have to change the UV width, which is really the radius that it actually is. Okay, so that's moved. Let me also bookmark this nice image that I believe Sabe found for me. Okay, another hard refresh. But we didn't change the radius yet, but we will do that. That's the next thing once we get this looking good. Interesting. Is it at least grabbing? Okay, so yeah, it's grabbing the right thing, but it's way too large. Or yeah, the UV is way too large. So we need to shrink that down. I'm gonna set it to half of what it's set to because yeah, that makes sense. That should get a much closer wrapping because I accidentally doubled the size before. And it still might be a little bit too big, but we're gonna have to play around with all these values until we get a very, very close tight fit. There we go. That's looking pretty good. There's not enough texture on it really. It's a little bit flat. So that bumpy texture that we made, one, I should probably make it, I should probably redo it and shrink it down. I'll make this at full opacity. Yeah, that's a little bit too large. So I need to up the frequency of the whole thing. There's a few ways I can do that. Some that are more hacky than others. Like I could just do one of these and tile this around a little bit. That's pretty hacky. I don't know if I really want to do that, but that would work just fine, really. And we'd have it at twice the frequency. I mean, the downside to that is it's tiling, which isn't the greatest thing, but I mean, it's not going to be that noticeable at all. It's a high frequency thing. And then we can merge all of these together. I think I'm fine with what it's at. And we also need to still have this inside of here as a clipping mask. And then I want to increase the contrast of this. It's a little bit too low contrast for my liking. Okay, let's try that in game. I mean, hopefully it won't be too high. Oh, actually, we want to lower the opacity of the whole thing too. Okay. Let's see how this looks. I might even want to, let me see what it looks like in game. I was going to say I might want to increase that opacity of this layer, which I think I'm going to. That highlights the outer ring of the whole thing. Okay, so now we can make sure we're not caching that texture. Just do a couple hard refreshes on this. Hopefully that's using the right texture now. I mean, it's a little bit hard to tell, but it looks like that's the higher noise. And a couple hard refreshes would normally just clear it out anyway, so it should be good. Yeah, that's definitely much better. I mean, it's still not great yet. We still have to do a lot of work on this, but that's getting there. It looks like, okay, so those are, right, so we need to limit the, if we look at it from the bottom, it looks like shit. We need to limit the radius on the top pieces. Right, so we take this, I mean, make something that would be called like top radius, which are these values, the bottom part. Yeah, so this is going to be called var top rad is rad divided by 2 or something. That should be fine. I mean, our UVs might still be, let's see, how close are our UVs to it? It actually gets pretty close, actually. I think it's a little bit hard to tell. Maybe it's a little bit, let me try to find out on this one. Okay, we probably could make our UVs a little bit tighter. I'll make that 0.8 as a thing. Where's our UVs? Let's make that times 0.8 as well. So make it a little bit tighter. That might be a little bit too tight. We'll see. And then we need to use that top rad here. Okay, let's see what this does. Okay, that is pretty good. I think on that bottom piece, I do want to use bottom RGB for all of these. I think it'd probably be for the best. And allow it to have more contrast and look better, hopefully. I probably want to put some UVs on those too. They have to be different UVs, but UVs. Yeah, the width would have to be smaller, but we can do that. Let's mess around with that right now. Just give it a little bit of texture, but I don't want to put the alpha stuff on there, which is why we need to make the even too tight, really. Okay, these probably have to be inverse because it's 1 then 2 on this side. So it's 1, 2, and then 0. And then this would be a UV with top, or no, bottom actually, which is just going to be like this, but like half the size even, or something around there. I'll say times point. I don't know. We'll try 0.7 from there. See how it looks, just to give it a little bit of texture. So it's not so flat. Hopefully this looks good and not like complete shit. Okay, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not great yet, but I think this is definitely better than where we started at. I think we're making some good progress with this. If we compare them, I still think that the texture needs more contrast. But if we compare it to this, which again doesn't look great, but if we look at a reference image, we're getting closer. Did I make this big? Yeah, I did. This, and you have this side by side. It's not that far off. I think my UV stuff is a little bit not my UVs. My distortion on the mesh is a little bit too much, which is at 20%, which actually it looked fine when it wasn't using UVs, but now that it is using UVs, it looks like really crazy. Yeah. So let's not do that. Why does it look so crazy? Unless I'm messing something up, but I think it is just like it's a little bit too much distortion, really. Now, we don't want them all to look too samey. We want them to look procedural, so we do have to worry about that. But this looks pretty good, right? There probably needs to be more contrast in the whole thing, and the whole color might be a little bit off. And we should randomly change the color for each one, so some are a little bit darker and some are a little bit lighter. Now, this one actually does get a lot darker towards the inside, so maybe that's something I should do. I mean, there's different types, and I haven't really decided which type I've really settled on. They look fairly similar, but they're a little bit different. Like this one is a different type of texture on the inside. This one's even crazier different, but I don't think we're going for anything like that because it's not very flat. We want something quite flat. This is another really good image, which is similar to what we already have, but not as contrasty as that other image. So this, like where it gets bright on the edges and the darkness here, there's a lot of difference. So it's very dark and very bright. But this is just, I mean, it is very bright, but it doesn't get very dark towards the inside. But yeah, definitely, I think we need more contrast, especially towards the edges. Yeah, they're very flat. Let me increase that texture contrast. I mean, it looks very contrasty here, but I guess we need even more. I know I'm going to overdo it, and we're going to have way too much contrast in the game. Yeah, let's just try this out. And maybe I'll go back to overlay for this then, and bring the opacity down a little bit. All right, maybe that's good. And maybe I should also, well, I'm going to limit the opacity on this. Maybe I should also make the edges a little bit more bumpy. Although I don't have a problem with the bumpiness that much in the game. Okay, what do I do here? Make sure the texture's updated. Okay, it looks like that's right. Go back into the game, hard refresh. See if this all looks a lot better, hopefully. I mean, I guess possibly the noise is also still not high enough frequency. And maybe the texture is just a little bit too low res. Those are both real possibilities. Let's see what this looks like. All right, that's closer. That's getting better. Are we okay? So our UVs, if I'm looking at this right, our UVs are a little bit too tight. It looks like. Yeah. So wherever we were doing that other UV thing, we want to do times 1.1, something like that. Floating point precision. So it's gonna make it 10% bigger because you can see right here it's getting cut off, which means it's probably doing that. Yeah, for almost all of these, probably. Yeah, at least a little bit. So this will give us another 10% clearance on those UVs. All right, let's see what this looks like. Might need still a little bit more actually. So I guess it was fine with where it was at. This is much, much better, but yeah, right here you can see it gets clipped a little bit. So let me add another 10% or maybe 8%. 7%? 7%, sure. Try that out. Whoops. I mean, it's not that bad if they're too large, just kind of a waste. Because you have all this geometry and it's just not even being used. It doesn't really matter though. It just doesn't, it's not logical. All right. Hopefully this is perfect. Looks perfect. And I guess that's why it was looking a little bit too crazy with that distortion. So now we can bring the distortion back up. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, especially from overhead. But to make them look a little bit more procedural, I think I'm going to bring the distortion value back up. I also may make that ring even more, make it even brighter. So right now it's at 10%. Let's bring that to 20%. And just do a hard refresh. Yeah, the coral that I'm going for is like this coral or this coral. Ignore this one. I could probably close that because I have a bookmark. Yeah, this coral or this coral. You can see they're very flat, very layered. And I think we're getting there. I think it's slowly looking like it. I could also turn up the density at which it spawns. I can clump it together a lot more. That might look better. It's not that bad though. The density's pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more dense. All right, but yeah, it looks pretty good. There's definitely more distortion. I mean, it's weird. Like 10% doesn't look like enough, but 20% is like a little bit overkill. So maybe we want to do just like 12%. It's a very finicky number. All right, this looks pretty good. It looks okay from underneath, not great, but looks okay from underneath. Now I do want to make the terrain a lot more bumpy underwater, so I guess I'm going to have to do that now. So once we reach a certain depth in the ocean, I'm just going to start making it really bumpy. Again, that might not really be realistic, but I think it's going to look a lot better in game. And right now, a lot of the smaller ones are being hidden by the larger ones. I'm not sure how I want to fix that. I can either make the height just randomized or even make the smaller ones taller, and that would be interesting. That's an interesting idea. So I'd like divide that by rad. Let's try this. This is gonna probably look really weird and bad. It'll give you more layers visible. And that will look better. So from top down, it might look really good, but from a side view, it'll probably look really bad. I'm guessing. I'm not really sure. Okay, yeah. So that does give us a lot more layers. So we see like before we didn't see these small ones; they were just kind of hidden under the larger ones. But the problem with this is, well, there's a lot of problems about this. It's not that bad though. Actually, it's not as bad as I thought. We can you know, you can see a little bit of a gap there, so I can bring that in even tighter to fix that. I mean, it's still gonna look like a cone, but that's not that. It's not the end of the world. But let me bring that in tighter, so that top radius is gonna actually be like more like 0.6. And also, I'm gonna possibly bring down that that UV width, yeah, to like 0.5 even. Okay, that might be good. I suppose what I could do, but it would be more polygons, is make it more rounded. It's not that bad though. I wish it was better. Again, from the top, it looks really good. Like this kind of view, it looks almost exactly like what I want it to look like. But from the side, I don't know how to handle these cones. Yeah, if we do flatter, then they're going to be floating on, like, let's say if we did this one flatter, it'd just be floating in the sky. It wouldn't be attached to the ground in any way, which that'd be no good. I mean, I could kind of get rid of the cone and just make more densely flat layers. But, that's not the best solution either. Okay, yeah, this isn't bad. It just, the cones underneath could look better. I guess what I can do is, the cones, the shape isn't necessarily bad, but they're too flat. So I can maybe try to add some sort of texture and geometry around the edges to make them look bumpier. And not such like a straight flat line. I mean, they're good enough actually to stop working on them right now because they really aren't that bad. I guess I could. Oh, something else that I can also do is just lower the depth a lot more. This would make them a lot more vertical, but maybe that would actually look okay. Maybe that would be a good thing. So it's almost going to look like there's big walls supporting them, and then maybe we could even bring in the top rate or the bottom radius for it. So it would just feel like there's like kind of like instead of being so cones that are so sharp, more like tubes underneath them. Here, let's see. Yeah, actually, that might be better. They taper in a little bit. Yeah. I'm thinking that's the way to go about it. Yep. That's it. Perfect. So the smaller ones are towards the top, and the larger ones are towards the bottom. I might want to increase the minimum height or something like that, but it looks really good, I think. I mean, I know that's not perfect. It still has these weird straight sides and stuff, and it's not great, but I think that's probably going to be good enough. I think I'm going to raise that top bit so they're not super flat. That might look like shit, though, but... Or what if I subtract it so they went up towards that? Let's try some things here. This could be a mistake. Gonna fuck around with some things. Because one thing that I don't like is if you look at it like kind of like straight on, it kind of disappears. It's super flat. But maybe we can do something where it kind of goes inside the model, which is probably a bad idea. But let me try this. All right, this might be the worst idea I ever had. And I guess it should be scaling based off radius. Really? Yeah, probably should. So maybe we'll do that soon too. But let's just see what this gives us. It might make it look a little bit better at like a perfect side-on view. Okay, well, it is doing clipping. But one thing that I can show... Oh, but back faces are actually off, aren't they? So this isn't going to work. It would have to be up since back faces are turned off. Okay, so let's make it so it goes up. That's fine. I mean, it already was going up a little bit, but I'm going to do it even more extreme. And I should multiply this by radius. All right, this is going to probably look like shit. What? Okay, I don't know why this is happening. Oh, I didn't say time. Sorry. Whoops, that was supposed to be times rad, not plus rad. Okay, so it's a very, very small amount, but it should help a little bit. I mean, once you go underneath it, then that's a back face thing, so we're not going to see it. Unless we duplicate the face, so there are back faces, but we probably don't want to do that. So I just need to make this value a little bit more apparent. And maybe it'll look good. Maybe. Yeah, definitely the texture top of ton. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so now they're a little bit bumpy on top, which actually is more apparent than I thought it would be here. And, we don't want it to really be that bumpy because they are supposed to be quite flat, but a little bit of a bump might be okay. And the good thing about doing a bump is if you look at them 90 degrees, like head on, they don't just disappear. You still see a little bit there. Oh, there's a weird whale doing some weird stuff up there. We'll kind of try to ignore that. I mean, again, if you make your camera too low, then they disappear because the back faces. But for the majority of them, it looks a little bit better from a side view. Just a little bit. It's a little bit disconnected from the bottom now. So I can try to fix that, but it might be good enough. I don't want to spend, all day on just this one coral entity. Oh, and interestingly, I can actually pick the flat coral, I think. Does that actually work? Oh, yeah. So I actually can pick this coral. So as you can see, if I walk over to this one, there's a little particle effect, and it deletes it. Go to this one. That's interesting. Just because of how I imported it the same as a mushroom, and you can pick mushrooms. So that's interesting. We don't really want to do that, though. Okay. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. I might want to do a little bit of color randomization, or at least lightness. I can't speak. Brightness randomization is what I'm trying to say. That's the word. So we can just do like var lightness or whatever equals 0.8 plus math.random times 0.4. So go from 0.8 to 1.2, so 20% variation. Actually, that's silly. Why don't I just do it this way? And actually kind of be, I guess that'd be 40% variation on each side. But we can do something like this. That's a little bit clearer. So then actually, if we did it like this would make it so it goes from 0.9 to 1.1. So it's 10% variation on each side, which is a total of 20% variation. And then we would just multiply that here on the lightness, which would also affect bottom, so that should be fine. So now we should have slightly lighter and slightly darker layers. Now that might not look good, but we gotta test it out. And again, we don't want to use math.random for these. We want to use the seed@random values, but I'm not ready to do that quite yet. Okay, so I guess some of these are slightly darker and slightly lighter. They kind of look all the same to me still. Also, the bottom layer that we're using, the bottom color, which actually I need to change something about this then. Bottom RGB, and then we're going to do a middle RGB, like a mid one, which is the same as this. Because the mid color looks fine, I think, as long as I'm actually using that color, which I think I am. Yeah, these. Those look fine. And maybe I'll use that as the very bottom ones. But for the top, which actually I'm reversing that. These are mid RGB. The bottom RGB, which is the ones that are actually kind of towards the top now, are a little bit too dark for my liking. So I'm going to make it more like 0.8. Okay. That might look good. The color variation isn't very apparent, so I'm going to make it a little bit more intense. Okay, that's interesting. Wait, so did I reverse those? Okay, yeah, I messed up the bottom parts, as you can see. Let me fix that. Okay, yeah, I fucked up something with those bottom colors. Where's the positions for that? So the positions for the bottom, yeah, that's supposed to use mid here and bottom here. Okay, so yeah, there's definitely some color variation here. I actually don't think I want them to get much darker than what they're at. Oh, I'm pressing all the wrong keys. Yeah, the darker ones don't look very good, but the lighter ones actually look really good. So we're just going to have to increase the starting value. And Yeah, we're gonna just have to play around all these numbers. Yeah, let's just not let it get darker. And then do like 0.2 here. That's fine with me. Okay, I mean, the nice thing about having them all the same brightness is places where it did clip, like here, it would blend in much more naturally, so you wouldn't really notice that. Well, there's a butterfly underwater, guys. That should be fixed. It's not bad, though. It's really not too bad with these settings. Might be fine. I mean, it's not perfect, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get it to be perfect. Doesn't need to be, at least for now, it doesn't need to be perfect. Does this look good enough, guys? Can't tell. I've been staring at it for too long. Just all looks like blah now. And the whole thing should only, for each coral piece, it should only be 18 polygons, which is a super low poly, so that's nice. To be honest, we might even be able to get away with it being lower poly. Now, I'm not doing a max check. Ooh, look at how cool that. See, this is why I want to make it so it has, so the ocean floor is bumpier, because look at how cool that looks on an incline. That looks so much cooler, I think. I mean, I still don't like the bottom pieces, and they're a little bit disconnected, so I'm gonna have to try to fix that. And I guess I might, yeah, I do have to put back faces on those. On those top pieces, I have to put back faces. There's no getting around it. But I can make it look a little bit more 3D doing those back faces, so that's good. Let me do that right now. Oh, but yeah, I guess that'll work. I'm trying to think. All right, hopefully this works fine. We're gonna find out. Which makes it's gonna make it a little bit higher poly, but there's so low poly that I think it'll be okay. It's more data to manage, but whatever, that's okay. All right, so those top positions, we're gonna duplicate those. So this is top. This is top underside. And this is bottom. So top underside, we need to reverse the order of all of these. Okay, so those are now back faces. And then what we also need to do is, I guess we'll bring the height down instead of up, and that will maybe look a lot better. Hopefully. Let's see what this does. This still might look a little bit too disconnected from the two top pieces, though. Oh, and I didn't push, I didn't push the other colors and stuff. 1 second to do that. And metadata. Oh, we're really missing some metadata here. And UVs as well. Okay, let's see what this does. Okay, so maybe instead of going down there, we want to go up on the outside bits. I'm not sure I want to handle these bottom pieces. But yeah, it looks better now because you can see them from this side, which looks really good. And then you can see them from this side, which looks pretty good. But the in-between is still a little bit weird, like there. That looks like shit. So I guess I'm just gonna, for the underside pieces, raise them up here. This might be a really bad idea. I mean, kind of works. You can also just raise up those bottom pieces a little tiny bit. All right, let me try to do that. So the bottom pieces, these two, just need to be brought up a tiny bit. 0.08 or something times rad. See if this makes it any better. I mean, yeah, it is still weird between the two pieces. I mean, I could just make them so they're exact bottom faces, but I figured that wouldn't look as nice. So it would just be the exact same face, just as back faces, but the same exact positions. But maybe this is okay, right? I think this might be okay. I think our bottom faces are a little bit too extreme, probably pointing downwards. Maybe I should try to fix that. So instead of doing this here, oh, but then that's going to disconnect them. So we just want to get rid of this. So it's only positive, but then we also need to make sure. All right, let's try that. It might look weird from the underside now, though, so I'll have to fuck around with that. Just need to line up perfectly. Yeah, it looks even worse, doesn't it? So I'd have to move those down now. Oh, this might... Okay, you know what? So we might just end up doing what we were basically doing before, I guess. So our 0 position was raised. We're going to raise this. And, yeah, I'm trying to think. Wait, so our outer positions were still 0, 0. So actually, I can just make these all 0, 0, 0, and that would just make it flat. And maybe that would be good enough. All right, let's just try that. I mean, I'm getting to the point where it's so close that they're basically just back faces at this point anyway, but I wanted to give it a little bit more depth. So it looked a little bit nicer. Maybe this will do it, though. As long as there's not too much of a gap. Right, and now the interesting thing with that is how it works with that piece. Oh, are we clipping through it all? No, we're not. Oh, because those are back faces, so we actually are clipping through a tiny bit. So you do have to move that back down. So where we did that 0.08, it needs to be more like 0.03. And then I guess I'm going to have to raise this again. I didn't want to do this. That's a little, at this point, it's literally just a back face. It's in the same exact position. I wanted to give it a little bit of depth. Why wouldn't that work, though? I thought that makes sense to me. That should work. Oh, it is actually working, but it's hard to see. Let's do half of this. Or about half of that. Okay, let's see how this looks. So there's a little bit of a gap there. So I should maybe just make this a back face, and that'll solve all my problems and just not worry about it. Although I guess it won't solve this in-between area here. Whatever. I think I'm being a little bit too nitpicky at this point. That's probably what's going on. But I think, especially from the top, I think it looks really good. Yeah, this looks awesome. This looks like coral, like exactly what I want. Almost exactly what I want it to look like. But look at these stupid whales. If you get like the perfect camera angle, it does look like shit. So yeah, that's not the best. Trying to think of how to just make it not look like shit. If I raised up those side values, that would maybe... No, I tried that already. I should maybe also make the undersides darker, but they don't really need to be darker. It looks fine just like that, actually. It's just this little in between. I'm being super finicky about this little in between point. Doesn't even matter. All right, let me try it as a perfect back face. Okay, so we're actually going to need to bring that up a little bit now. So it was 0.08 was too much, 0.03 is too little, 0.05 is maybe perfect. I guess it's okay if it sticks out a little bit as long as we're super careful about when we look at it. Okay, you know what? This is probably good enough, right? I mean, there's this little period of time where it looks a little bit flat, but they're supposed to be flat anyway. I think this is as good as it's going to get. And I think it probably looks pretty good. I think these, I still want to be maybe a little bit darker. Yeah, a little bit darker. So that's the bottom RGB. So doing 0.08, let's do 0.065. And then maybe I'll make the undersides darker if I feel like it needs it now. I mean, not really. It's okay if it is bright, actually, I think. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe I made it a little bit too dark underneath. Who knows? But I guess from the side view, it looks good like that.